Rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we have Rebecca today interviewing me about one of my books, and we'd look at the negotiations and bargaining strategies. So Rebecca come up with a few questions. What's your first question?
Well, what inspired you to write your book?
I think that I want to make a better world. And I think when people negotiate and bargain, and they can better themselves, so that if I can help with advice, that makes some people life better.
Is that how you got into negotiations and bargaining?
Well, we all negotiate at some point in our life. When we start as a kids, we negotiate for toys, we negotiate for food. So like everybody else, I negotiate when I was a child. I didn't have the cash probably to pay to my parents, but I was negotiating with hugs and kisses. But that's still negotiation. So for me, it was like for everybody else. I just happened to be good at it, and having quite a few decent jobs. That's why I had some interest in the being selling and bargaining strategies.
Yeah, so you must have had a successful negotiation with your parents. One of
Yes.
them. What was your most successful negotiation that you had with your parents?
My most successful negotiation with my parents.
Yeah.
I get quite a few interesting animals at home.
Oh.
I get to have the tiger, I get to have the crocodile, I get normal kids don't have monkeys, and even the little small elephant I had for a couple of days. So the normal people don't get that kind of animal, a pet zoo at home.
Oh no, you are very good at what you do.
Well, my grandfather was the director for circus for many years, for like 50 years, and having that position, obviously he had access to all kind of exotic animals, and whenever they needed, and I love the animals, so whenever they have a baby tiger or a baby elephant, I was, usually they would stay in the circus, but sometimes having, big, property and stuff, we would be able to accommodate that kind of pets. I think that's something not every child have in childhood. I have marks, scratches from bear and the tiger, so I actually have scars from, real animals.
From your negotiations.
But yes, yes. Let's go back to the line of questions that you have.
So the science, right? So how did you learn to the next question was actually
let's see.
It was, how did you come up with a scientific measurement for the success of a negotiation?
In science, there are certain ways to measure things, and whatever is appropriate in the world of science, facts and the experiments. And so there are I'm not the first one who does it. So when you go to school for bargaining, for negotiation, game theory, you get to learn what other schools of thought done, and so you just follow the path. So it's really difficult to do something really, really drastically new. As long as results are there, and as long as they are verifiable and could be repeat with other scientists, I think that's a fair system.
Is there a certain field that you focused on when you were doing your scientific measurements for the success of negotiations?
Not really. I'm mostly was interested to break it down from the very kind of complicated language with lots of professional terminology, to build that something that normal folks who don't have to learn all that complicated research terminology, they can actually apply that and measure whether you have a sale, or you have a lead, or you build a relationship, like how the negotiations could be measured, because people just say, oh, if you you have not completed with the sale today, that's a failed negotiation. Not necessarily. If you build additional couple of leads, if you build relationship, if the sale will come like a few months later or much larger scale, that might be also success. So there are different ways to measure, not only on today's or like bottom line.
Yeah. So how do you define success?
How do I define success? One thing is if you're happy with yourself with the results. Another thing could be perhaps if you better yourself in the process. So you might not accomplish a sale at that moment, but you change your technique, you learn something, so next time you don't make those mistakes. That also could be a success. When you negotiate, there are different levels of success. If you, instead of this deal, you might get an introduction to another client who might give you a bigger deal or a couple of other deals, that also could be a success. So it's not always like a black and white. There are tangible things at stake and intangible.
Yeah, I bet that helps viewers who are watching this, who are in the process of learning to become better salespeople. And how did you learn to, or what was your process with negotiating with really strong salespeople when you were a beginner, and then how has it changed over time?
Usually there are a lot of books on the subject. There are a lot of research done how to negotiate with really wealthy people, with really big celebrities, with really powerful politicians. So usually the techniques, like when you're holding a smaller position or like a beginner, comes in biology. And that happens pretty much everywhere, whether you look at dogs or cats, or like if a huge dog versus a small puppy, you would see the small puppy would kind of kneel and show the belly and show her neck. If people do the same thing, people are mostly animals rather than humans. So this biological. So when you're someone smaller, when you smile, when you show that your weakness, like that you acknowledge that you are a small servicing person, and that's a major client or celebrity, that's basically you doing the same thing. So there are another technique that many salespeople do not acknowledge that they do such a thing, but that's what they actually do when they kiss the ass of the like a wealthy person or important person. So the noble way of dealing with this would hold your ground and be honorable, and be friendly, and show that you're human as well. Let's say, if in the analogy with dogs, you would see a major big dog and a smaller dog. If the smaller dog will just wave the tail and just be friendly, they still can negotiate the space and room. So there are different ways to deal with it. Flattery sometimes helps, not necessarily that's the best technology, but usually people who are powerful, they want to be acknowledged as powerful. And the danger in those kind of negotiations is by dealing with the measurement that you can get pretty much the same whether you make a sale to an important person or regular person. It's the same commission, same trade. But the dangers if you make a wrong sale and someone famous will tarnish the company reputation, that's much more dangerous. So the consequences could be very on larger scale than versus the just regular folks.
So you've developed this, and you have all this experience under your belt from working through these obstacles, correct?
I don't think I have developed. I don't have that many scientific papers, so that I don't think I want to take a credit for something that been discovered and researched by others. Okay. So I would have to specifically mention who developed which technique if we're talking about science. But I have, went to school for bargaining, for negotiations. I read pretty much, the classic books that are available on the subject. So, and you can tweak it your way, and you kind of, certain techniques you can kind of make it your own. But first you better went to school and just learn the proper way of how things done, and then you can, some of them kind of make it your own.
Begin to apply it, which is what you did
Yes.
with your book. You applied what you learned,
Yes.
and then you developed your own protocol.
Yes,
Right?
I would say. Yeah.
And in your first year out in sales, you made 6 figures, yeah?
Yeah, look,
By applying the protocols and making them your own.
I think that
Or the techniques.
People who are really in love with sales and care for the bargaining and care for negotiations are capable to make pretty decent money. This country is right now, whether its market is up or down, it's really a great opportunity to earn substantial income. So certain bargaining techniques can take you to the next level and get your numbers much higher.
Yeah, you also mentioned that part of the reason you got into sales and bargaining had to do with bettering the world, that if you're a good negotiator and you can find common ground, that enhances humanity. And how does that apply in the political arena?
Well, right now we have a gentleman in the White House who mostly believes in the distributive negotiations, when it's a zero-sum game, and if he is loud or he's aggressive, or there are certain types of techniques that he apply that makes his partners grovel and accept his terms, but it leaves a lot of bad feeling behind. So there are different ways to deal with something like that. There are ways to you can acknowledge that the person is important. Someone like Trump might not necessarily care for the bottom line, for the money, but for the saving face and having a great reputation. So he might take that as a tangible that he wants and give you actual good trade. Someone like that might be in the pretty much believes that this is what I want. That's the pie that we're dealing, and I'm getting the lion's share of that. If you can show to a person like that the pie is much bigger, and you can have many pies, and you have the whole pizzeria and the much network of pizzerias, then the person kind of see things your way and might come aboard. So there are ways to kind of better the world by properly bargaining, and you just need to know the classic techniques, how it's done, and it's the more you practice those, the more you get better at it.
Wonderful. It sounds like it's business and psychology and biology all rolled into one, with certain outcomes,
Yes.
With intended outcomes, and then you negotiate.
A lot of people think that it's negotiations and the honor and ability. Those are the human factors, and it's what defines us different from animals, which is not true. If you observe the animal behavior, you would see that there is a lot of those traits in the primates, and there are other species that show that same kind of behavior. So if person really understand where the fundamentals behind this, like a woman wants to advance herself or in a career, and she use her sex appeal for that. Certain people might not agree with this, but the reality is, if you look in the animal world, that's what's happening there. That's where the basis for that comes. So if you kind of know what's the biology behind this, you might be more successful. And better things, there are different ethics and versus morals. Maybe we might talk about the difference in those one day. Let's see what else we didn't cover today. What we planned.
What suggestions would you have for people starting out in sales and negotiations?
I think that for folks who are new to the process, or just observe yourself, see where your faults are. Maybe get a couple of decent books. Maybe you can read my book on negotiations. Practice, go to school. There are plenty of places to practice and learn, and there are plenty of YouTube tutorials, and there is a whole industry of folks who do care how to bargain, how to negotiate, and there is no need to pay for the seminars, for the fancy schools. A lot of those people just take your money, and they give you something. But what you can do for free right now with the Google and the internet and things is tremendous. So I don't think there is a necessity to invest a tremendous amount of money in this. Just reading the decent, credible sources, and see their true nature. Is that done just to improve things, or it's done to better the person who trained the seminar? If the money is pretty much substantial, probably you can read the same thing for free on the internet. So I think just read, practice, apply, and get fundamentals.
Yeah, that sounds great. And you also mentioned the process, that to acknowledge that things may not look the way you think they're supposed to.
Cognitive bias is very important when you negotiate, because some people usually care for themselves, so they do not listen to the other party. So if you learn to kind of see yourself from on the side and separate yourself from the position that you're holding, you can just look at two positions and you partner with the other side, and that might be helpful. There are plenty of techniques how to look at negotiations, but I think that if you have humanity, and if you understand the biology behind why you negotiate, why the other party negotiate, what's at stake, if you can the more you know about the other party, and research them, and the more you prepare for the negotiations, the more planning you put into this, obviously the better results might be.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to share for the camera, for the people watching?
I think hopefully if you guys like what we discuss here, maybe we'll record another one of those videos. I think Rebecca did a tremendous job on the fly. You should know, I asked Rebecca this a few days ago, and we didn't do any practice and preparation, and Rebecca, I think, did a great job of asking me questions. So if you like to have a host like that on our channel, we look into those. So your comments on Rebecca's performances, in addition to my information, would be greatly appreciated. So I would know whether you guys want to host like that. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.